Hey everybody, if you need fantasy football advice to help you win going into week 2, you're in the right place, and that is RotoBaller. Our rankings for each week are updated constantly, just doing it again before the weekend. So I'm going to pick some of the players that are kind of on that bubble here as far as who do you start, who do you sit. Right now I'm going to talk about wide receivers for week 2, that wide receiver 3, 4 kind of flex range. And sometimes you don't know based on the matchup which way do you go? I'm going to tell you some of my favorite must starts and must sits that might not be too obvious. So let's get going with the guy who had a huge week 1, and that's Devonta Smith of the Eagles. Clearly, he's the wide receiver 1 in Philadelphia. There's no question there. The question is the matchup going against San Francisco, is he going to have the same kind of success? Obviously, a pretty tough defense there. Atlanta, not so much, right? Didn't give a lot of resistance in week 1. So, yeah, it's a better defense. We know that. But here's the thing. So 49ers just lost their top cornerback, Jason Verrett, for the whole year, and that downgrades the whole secondary. That means it's a little bit better than it would have been for Smith. Look, he's still going to get a lot of attention here, but this is a team that spreads the ball out. This is not going to be a pass offense that is heavy towards the wideouts. They're going to have to cover the middle of the field with both tight ends, Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert, getting attention, and of course the run game. And when you have a quarterback like Jalen Hurts, who you know can scramble and run for big yardage, that keeps the safeties honest. I really feel like Smith is the kind of guy who can take the top off the defense in any given game, but also in this game, just because, the defense itself is going to be tougher, it doesn't mean that Smith can't have success. So for those reasons, I'm saying you're going to start him. He has the upside that surpasses, if not matches at least, everybody else in his range. So don't keep Smith out of your lineup this week. This might seem obvious, but you're still wondering, well, I spent a pretty early draft pick on Brandon Aiyuk. Am I going to start him? No, you're not. We're hearing conflicting reports. So is it the hamstring? Is it that he's in the doghouse? Is there something else going on behind the scenes? There's some conspiracy theories floating around there I'm not going to get into, but let's just say it's a combination of things. And right now, it doesn't matter what their issue is. It seems pretty obvious. Aiyuk is not going to be one of the top targets going into this week. He's going to play, right? It's not as if they solely identified the hamstring and said that he's not fully healthy. Not that Kyle Shanahan would do that anyways. He doesn't like to give away too much information, as you know. But still, it seems like he's been brought along slowly. I think it's partly the hamstring. It's partly also, some things that he isn't showing up great in practice, maybe because of the injury, that he just needs to be a little more consistent. But whatever the case is, I don't feel comfortable starting him. You don't want to risk putting a guy in your spot and getting a big fat zero like you did last week. So that's the thing. It's just not worth the risk. I'm not saying put Trent Sherfield in his place. I wouldn't do that, but there's plenty of other guys, some of which I'll talk about here, that you could put instead. So I'm staying away from Aiyuk in this game. And also, don't forget, talk about Philly, switching here matchups. Philly had Atlanta last week. Philly did a really good job in the secondary shutting down Atlanta's receivers. I know Atlanta not the best team offensively. Big play Slay looks like he's back. So don't sleep on this Philly defense being a lot better than it was last year. All right, now Mike Williams had a huge week 1. Might have an even bigger week 2 because he gets to face the Cowboys, as if the Cowboys weren't devastated enough on defense. They just lost their top pass rusher, DeMarcus Lawrence, for a couple of weeks. And I know that Trevon Diggs looked really good in the secondary last week, but he's probably going to spend a lot of time moving around covering Keenan Allen at times, even though Allen works out of the slot quite a bit. It's not going to be a shadow situation. We don't know if that was just, maybe a beginner's luck kind of thing. I'm not saying it was beginner's luck, but still, you know what I'm saying. He might not be necessarily the next shutdown corner just because he had a good first game. The Cowboys don't have anybody on defense that should scare you away from opposing receivers. The Chargers look really sharp. Justin Herbert, I think he's going to have even better second year. Some people predicting a step down. I'm not one of those. I think he's going to do better. Michael Williams was banged up a lot last year, had a disappointing season, but he looked really sharp in week 1, so I think he's going to put up even bigger numbers. I'm keeping him in my starting lineup until he proves me wrong in that sense. Now, a lot of people are excited to have Will Fuller back at receiver. You say, well, he's the kind of guy, he's on the field, you put him in, you have to start him. No, you don't. Okay, here's the thing. Will Fuller already missing practice this week. not because of injury, surprisingly, but a personal matter. So something's going on. Even if that's cleared up, maybe it was just a short-term thing. The fact that he's already missing practice, not a good sign. And let's not forget, this isn't Houston with Deshaun Watson throwing it to him. It's going to be Tua, and I'm a Tua fan as big as anyone, trust me. But I'm not delusional. He's not going to get the same kind of volume that he would get from Deshaun Watson. And also the fact now he's competing with Devonta Parker and Jalen Waddle for targets. So Fuller isn't the clear number one receiver like he was in Houston. And going against Buffalo, we saw Buffalo's defense look pretty good. We know this is a solid defense, but if Fuller is the guy who draws a lot of Tre'Davious White, that's going to be a very bad matchup. All told, Fuller coming in, his first game as a Dolphin, his first real game, his first action with Tua in a negative matchup. And when Jalen Waddle looked pretty good last week, I just don't see it for him. He's going to have to hit on a big play, which he could at any time. But let's wait and see if the chemistry builds there. Let's see what happens on the field before you start putting him in the lineup. So I'm taking a wait and see approach in the leagues in which I do have Fuller. All right, and then go a little deeper here. I just say must start. I'm not going to say you have to put Callaway everywhere in your lineup because obviously there's some leagues where you got him as maybe your fifth receiver. If you drafted later in the preseason, well, maybe you had to reach a little to get him as your fourth guy. Hopefully you have three receivers to put in that are ahead of him. But if I do have him in a lot of leagues, honestly, I'm putting him in because I know he was disappointing last week, just had that one catch, and it was Deontay Harris who had the big play. But if you look deeper, the snap count, Marquez Callaway dominated in that sense. He was on the field 84% of the time. Other than the offensive lineman and Jameis Winston, nobody else had more snaps for New Orleans than Marquez Callaway on offense. You might say, well, that doesn't matter. Who cares how much he's on the field, right? You have a tight end that's on there 100% of the time. He's blocking. Doesn't do anything for fantasy. Well, here's the thing. With Callaway, it does matter because we want to see who is, top in that pecking order for receivers. And Callaway is number one. He didn't get the targets because he was going against Jair Alexander, a really good, maybe one of the best, if not the best cover corners in the NFL now for Green Bay. Callaway had a tough assignment. He just didn't get the targets. Look, nobody got a lot of targets because Winston only threw the ball 20 times, right? He took what was given to him. A lot of times that was the tight ends, right? It was Alvin Kamara on the little dump off. So don't worry too much about week one. He gets a much easier matchup here with Carolina. He is still their top receiver. I think we're going to see him as the top target and could hit on a big play here against a little more suspect secondary. And then one more guy I'm going to tell you to sit. That's Michael Pittman. You might consider putting him over a guy like Callaway, but I'm down on Pittman. So the thinking here is obviously the Rams are really good on defense. So the other thing is you might say, well, if the Rams are big, up big early and, Colts have to pass, that favors the receivers. Not necessarily. I actually think this is a Nyheim Hines type of game. The Colts are going to have to take what's given to them, and a lot of times that's the shorter intermediate stuff here. Look, Pittman was actually out-targeted by Zach Pascal last week. It wasn't just that Pascal got the touchdowns. He got more receptions and more targets than Pittman. Pittman should still be the main guy going forward. Not saying he's been passed by or anything, but this is just too tough a draw. He's going to get a lot of Jalen Ramsey, and I just don't feel like the Colts are going to really keep up with the Rams. Big on the Rams this year, if you couldn't tell. So Pittman, I think, might disappoint. Got to hope for maybe some garbage time production. I do think the Rams are going to be up, significantly big in the first half. That's just my take on it, but we'll see what happens. Pittman still, again, not a guy that you can feel too secure about with that floor, so I'm going to keep him on my benches too. All right, guys, that's week 2. Wide receiver starts it. Of course, check our rankings out at RotoBaller.com. Constantly updated throughout the weekend to give you the latest and the best. Our Nick Mariano, by the way, already on fire. Number 4 in accuracy rankings after the week that just happened. So always check his rankings out. Available also on Fantasy Pros. All right, guys, thanks for watching.